Hello there, fellow monster madness ghouls and goblins. You're currently hearing the voice of a girl with no name, and it's here with very, very clear intentions to sound the alarm. Before you listen any further, beware that frightful spoilers and deliciously explicit language lie ahead. For once you find yourself in the midst of those telltale bumps in the night and the haunting howls of host laughter and cinematic judgment, there is no turning back. Choose wisely.
Hey everyone, back with another Fireside chat. Hopefully you enjoyed the first one. This is looking like it's going to be a little more than just a random one-time thing. While Erica's still healing from her baby thing she did, real good. Anyways, this time I have writer, director, producer, actor Jude Walko. I'd met him a couple years back when he made a movie with Dean Cain called The Incantation that was out on Netflix at the time. Briefly talk about that, but he has a new movie called Shark Island that he's currently pitching to get some distribution. So we talk about that. We talk about a lot of random stuff. So it's kind of interesting. He's in Thailand, so he's about, it's 13, 14 hours ahead of me. So as we talk, it was like 9 a.m. for me and 10 p.m. for him on a Sunday, which was kind of fun. But hopefully you guys enjoy it, and make sure you check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. We've been doing that a lot lately too in the downtime, interim, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, without further ado, here's my talk with Jude Walko.
Well, I was doing this job called Boys and Girls with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Claire Filmani, a movie called Boys and Girls. This had to be in maybe year 2000. The year 2000.
Been a while since I heard that.
I know. And the director was Bob Iskoff. I think that's his name, Bob Iskoff. And he really wanted Christian Slater to be in his next movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Christian at that time had taken time off because he got into some trouble. I'm not sure. I think he was maybe dabbling in some drug use, and he got accused of beating his wife, all kinds of bad things.
Yeah.
So he was taking time off because he wanted to fix himself. And his mom is a big casting agent. His mom is Mary Jo Slater. So she's a huge casting agent in the film business. So I guess Mary knew Bob Iskoff and was like, well, let's talk to Christian. You know, he hasn't been doing anything. He kind of weaned his way back in with Broadway. Because he just, you know, he didn't feel like he was in the right place yet. Mm-hmm. But back then I was answering phones. You know, this is like 20 years ago, and I was like a production secretary maybe on that show, maybe just an office PA actually. And so whenever anyone called, I would answer the phone. So Christian Slater called one day, and like his voice is unmistakable. You know, he has that awesome voice, and so he called for Rob. It's Rob Iskoff, I think, not Bob Iskoff. It's Rob with an R. And I was like, you know, I was kind of starstruck because I was a huge fan of his back with Heathers and all that stuff. That's kind of right in my age bracket. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh man, he's like, yeah, this is Christian for Rob. And I was like, oh my God, Christian Slater. You know? So he's like, and he was just totally cool, man. And he was like, yeah, man, who's this? And I'm like, this is Jude, blah, blah. So anyway, long story short, every day he would call in because Rob was trying to get him to be on his next film. So it was taking a lot of convincing. And I don't even know if he convinced them, but they would have these like heart-to-heart talks. Mm-hmm. And every day I was the guy to answer the phone. And after about 2 weeks of this, like me and Christian had a little rapport going. So we'd shoot the shit for like 5 minutes before he's like, yeah, what's going on? And then we talk back and forth, blah, blah. And then I'd finally pass him over to Rob. So that was my Christian Slater story. He was a really cool dude, at least on the phone.
That's funny. I mean, it's one time people are like, oh, I talked to so-and-so. And it's like, oh, I ran past him and it was 5 seconds. I'm like, normally you don't get a story that's a consistent 2 weeks of conversation every day.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was great. I was hoping he'd come out, but I think we were in San Francisco for that particular movie. Mm-hmm. And I think it was either in LA or New York at the time. So,
man, I'm glad you finally opened that beer. Just watching you shift it back and forth is starting to make me nervous.
This is, I'll tell you what this is. I love this. So I'm a big fan of Hoegaarden beer. I like the Weiss beers, you know. So Thailand has a beer that's called Singha. It's like their oldest beer, and it was their brewery was established in 1933. So they pretty much carbon. They're good at Thailand. They're good at copying stuff. Like they make the fake Gucci bags and the fake. Now they make the fake beer, but I mean it's real beer. But I swear to you, it tastes like I would challenge anyone to have a blind taste test of a Hoegaarden and a Snow Weizen and taste it, because to me, maybe I'm not as cultured as most, but it tastes pretty damn close, you know.
The way I see it is, it's either good or it's not. And
Right.
like
Yeah.
I'm personally in pretty deep in the beer game.
Oh,
But I
nice.
still like what it comes down to is like I either like it or I don't. Like I don't give a shit about palate and nose and feel and shit. I'm like, it's either good or it's not, and whatever. So I'd completely agree. Like if you like it, that's fine. Like I still like Coors Light.
Yeah, there you go.
Nothing wrong with Coors Light.
Nothing wrong with it, man.
Yeah, it has a time and a place.
I remember back when PBR was like, you know, just the cheapest beer you could get, and before it got all, you know, hipster on us, you know. It was just like what you bought because you didn't have enough money, so you bought a couple of 6-packs of PBR.
Yeah, we used to, when I was just 21, we practiced in a house across the street from a grocery store, and the grocery store had 6-packs of Tall Boy Milwaukee's Best Ice for like $2.25, and I was like, I could get really fucking drunk for $2. So that's what I would drink when we would practice, because I was very broke. So I completely agree. But then I remember like 10 years later going to a concert, and you could get the 32-ounce cans of PBR, and they were like $12.
I know, right?
And everyone was buying them, and I'm like, the thing costs like $1.50 at a store at most.
Yeah, exactly. That happened. The same thing happened in LA, and then I feel like the whole country, you know, wherever I was shooting, like PBR was like the go-to hipster beer. At some point, it kind of transitioned over.
Well, it's the whole like, it's garbage, but it's cool. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't understand it either.
But I mean, thanks for coming. Like it was kind of like within a couple days we put this whole thing together, and it worked out really well. Plus I hadn't really talked to you, and it's been like 2 years.
Yeah, man, it's been since the Incantation sort of came out, which
2018.
2018, man. Yeah, it's been a while.
Damn, how have you been?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you. It's great.
Yeah.
I've been great, man. I've been pretty busy. I've been doing all kinds of stuff. I even worked through a big portion of the pandemic. I was on a show during that at the beginning.
That's one thing that I did want to talk about, because of being in the movie industry and how that's all affected. And now that we're like a year, almost a full year, let's say March 16th is the day I started working from home.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's been almost a full year. Now I got ahead of myself because we do know each other, but I know that this being a different show than you've been on before, a lot of people don't know who you are.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Like you said, we met when you came out with the movie The Incantation, which is it still on Netflix?
I think it's on Amazon Prime and iTunes, and honestly, you can watch it on YouTube now because there's some shady. Shady. I mean, they say they're legit. I don't know, but you know, if you don't have the money to spend on it, then go watch it for free on YouTube. If you have the money, then you know, donate to my cause. Either way, I'm cool. Just go see it. But yeah, it's all over the place, man. You can see it almost anywhere.
Yeah. So
not Netflix.
It was I mean, when we met, it was originally on Netflix. But either way, neither here nor there. That's how we met. So you're obviously a director. You've done a lot of shit. So I'm just gonna let you say what you've done.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So for your listeners who don't know me, I'm almost 50. I'm 48 years old, and I've been in the business since I was a wee lad. Like I've been peripherally in the business ever since I was like high school age, and then I started working in the business like at like 20 or 21. So I've been in the business a couple, almost 3 decades. So a long time in the movie business. I worked my way up through the ranks, like I was mentioning earlier. Sort of started as a PA, which is a production assistant, doing answering phones, getting coffee, making copies, picking people up, picking up their laundry, like whatever it took. And then over, time, I started to work my way up. I started originally in the production side of things. So I was mostly in the office to start with, not on set, but that was great because I was learning from production managers and line producers and UPMs, seeing contracts, talking with actors like Christian Slater, seeing all the business side of it all kind of ran through the office, and then eventually I did all kinds of jobs. I've done all kinds of jobs in film, everything from grip and electric to, producing and all that stuff. So eventually I worked my way up a few decades and I start producing stuff. So like when that whole shift, some of your listeners are probably a little young for this, but there was a whole shift from actual film to digital that happened. And I was around for that whole thing. So around that time, that's when indies sort of sprouted their head in true form, because you no longer had to be a large, gigantic studio to make a movie. Not anyone, but almost anyone could get a prosumer camera, and they didn't have iPhones then, but they had cameras that you could get and shoot a movie. And if you had some connections and some credit cards, or somebody was willing to fund your movie, you could do it. So I started producing, because the catch-22 was, before that, I didn't have the experience to produce because I wasn't old enough and I just didn't have the experience. So no one would let me produce. But when indies started, they needed producers, but an experienced producer wasn't going to do a little indie. So I kind of cut my teeth and did probably a decade of those, of just learning on the fly, mistakes and learning how to produce films. And eventually I got good enough where I could produce real studio films. And I'm on the Producers Council, the Producers Guild of America now. So I'm like certified PGA. I'm a SAG actor, which is Screen Actors Guild in America, SAG-AFTRA. And I'm a director. I'm not DGA yet, but that's probably coming up down the road. And I've written I think I've written 8 scripts at this point, and a novel, which we'll get into that probably at some point in this talk. But yeah, so I've done everything. I've done everything from the grunt work, the manual labor, all the way up the chain to I've executive produced, I've directed, I've acted, I've been in front of the camera. So I know my way around a film set, I guess you could say.
I do want to point out the fact. So you're in Thailand currently. So it is 10 p.m. for you. It's 9 a.m. for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I knew you wrote a book, but when you said it, I'm like, holy shit, you wrote a book. It's because it's 9 a.m. and I just started drinking coffee. So I'm a little behind the eight ball on this one. But yeah.
No worries. It's all good. We'll catch up eventually.
Yeah. Not too worried. And I didn't even stay up late last night. So I have no excuse. But yeah, so man, I guess I don't know where you want to start. Like, obviously you're here to talk about your new movie, Shark Island.
Yeah.
So I'll let you kind of because you have a bunch of backstory and stuff in front of the camera that we did want to talk about. I do want to talk about your book. I do want to talk about Shark Island. So you, like I said, you just kind of take it where you want to go, and then we'll take her as she comes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, let's talk Shark Island. So, so again, like back when the same thing with producing, no one is just going to let you produce a movie if you haven't done it. The same kind of applies to directing. No one's going to hire you to direct a movie if you don't have directing experience and all that stuff. So we discussed this before, but your new audience won't know any of this, but from my perspective, but basically, when I did the incantation, it was sort of my calling card with my company, Blue Falcon Productions, to prove that I could direct a movie, because both producing movies, and I had done what's called ghost directing, which basically is, when you're responsible for directing for whatever reason. Maybe the director leaves the set, maybe the director puts you in charge, maybe the director's incompetent and you just have to do it because someone has to do it. So I had ghost directed quite a bit of films, and I had worked with directors, from the smallest to the biggest, Oscar award winners, all the way down to nobody. So I had experienced firsthand the whole gambit of personalities, directing styles, and what it took. And I've always been a creative person forever since I was born. So I have that need that creatives have to always put something out there, no matter what it is, whether it be writing or a visual medium or, dancing a jig or whatever. Just you're always like wanting to put stuff out there. So I had spent, now upwards almost 3 decades, as I said, helping create other people's stuff, because as ultimately a producer, which is how I made my bread and butter and my career, my job is to get people's stuff in the can and get it on schedule and on time and on budget. But for them, whatever their vision is, creating their vision. And I had done that for decades, and I wanted to flex my own creative muscle, but again, no one's going to give you that chance. No one's going to say, oh, here's a movie, why don't you direct it? That's just never going to happen. Mm-hmm. So Incantation was me and my business partner, Dan Campbell, finally saying, all right, we know how to do this. He knows how to produce as well. I was like, let's write an original script. Let's make this movie. And we did. So we did that. I pulled a favor with Dean Cain, former Superman, to star in it, because again, it was an indie we made basically on credit cards with not a lot of money. So Dean agreed to do it, because if any of you out there are looking to make a movie, you should try to have at least one name, even if it's a C- name or someone that was famous 20 years ago, because it's going to be really hard to get your movie noticed without it. That's just a fact of the business. So get whoever, I don't care if it's Meredith Baxter Birney, like whoever you have to find that's that person that could kind of be the face of it, do that. So now I wanted to direct another movie, and there was another indie. As you mentioned, I live in Thailand. I spend most of my time in Thailand. I have a wife and kids here, and a couple properties. And I spend a lot of time in LA and in the States. And then if I'm shooting, I shoot all over the world. So that could be anywhere. But this is my home base. I'm based out of Thailand. So an opportunity came up of a little indie that they wanted to shoot in Thailand. They needed a director. They know I had directing experience. So I said, sure, I'd love to do that. So they came with me of this idea of Shark Island, which is a shark movie. It's a low budget, like think of Sharknado, but not as crappy, I hope. But in the vein of, a shark movie, it is what it is. It's eye candy. And they came to me with a script. It had already been written and all that. And I said, sure, yeah. It's been 2 years since I did Incantation. I want to do a movie, so I helped them reflesh out the script. Originally, it had like Russians and spies and all kinds of crazy stuff that we could never afford, and just would have been very complicated to shoot, especially on a budget. So I basically cut it down to meat and potatoes, made it a fluid, efficient story, called in a bunch of favors, got a bunch of hot models in Thailand, and shot it for like, I don't know how long we shot this one. It wasn't very long, maybe 3 weeks, but it was beautiful. Like I have friends. There's an island in Thailand called Koh Chang. Koh means island, K-O-H. That's how it's spelled phonetically. Koh Chang. Chang means elephant in Thai. So Koh Chang is Elephant Island, which is ironic. We're shooting Shark Island on Elephant Island. But I had some friends there that had a resort, and there was a company called Ayapura, which is like a really fancy 5-star resort, like super fancy, like Maldives type place. And they were very open, because our lead actress, her name is Erin Alvey. She's a country singer. Her parents own the castle that we shot Incantation in. So that's the connection there. Okay. Yeah. And she's dating like one of the guys on the Nashville Predators hockey team, I think they're called. But anyways, she's an up-and-coming country singer, super amazing, and she was perfect for the role of the lead role. And so she has like a social media following and all that. So she had reached out to this Ayapura 5-star resort and was like, "Hey, I'm coming to Thailand. What can you do for us?" And they pretty much gave us their resort to do what we want with, which was great, because it was really fantastic. So we used all their resources and a ton of their locations. And it's just, like I said, it's 5-star. It's like in a private alcove. So just imagine this pristine turquoise water that's kind of like a half moon bay shaped with mountains going, like tropical island, and then just sort of ocean, or I don't know if it's a sea or an ocean. It's probably a sea, but it looks like an ocean. It's just gorgeous. So that's where we shot it. So we shot a movie there in Ko Chang. And we had to, it's a little crazy because we had to, it's like 6 hours from Bangkok, and everything's based in Bangkok. So we had to drive down there. You can only get there on and off a ferry. So it took some logistical finagling, but we did it. And so the trailer's out now. So that's what kind of prompted this, because some big companies like Dread Central and Weeblo Weeblo is a Boy Scout. No, yep. It's called Joe Blow and Movie Web and Dread Central and like a dozen others are promoting the trailer now. So it's getting some pretty good traction.
Nice. Yeah, it's kind of funny that you brought this up, because during our lockdown, or at varying degrees, I've gotten really big into Survivor. Oh, never really watched it. So he sends it to me. I read the plot line and I'm like, it's just Survivor with sharks.
Yeah, it is.
Right
they shot a season on Thai. They have a Survivor Thailand too. So that's perfect.
I've been hopping around, so I haven't seen it yet, but I've just given into it because when I'm home 24 hours a day, 5 days a week or whatever, like, what else am I going to do?
Exactly.
Only play so many video games.
Yeah, totally, man. But that's not bad though. That's a good life.
Yeah. It could be much worse.
I worked with one of the Survivor contestants. I don't think she did very well. Her name was Jessie Camacho, and I don't even know what episode. There's so many of Survivors, man. There's like I don't know how many seasons.
40.
Oh, there's 40. Oh my god. Well, she was on one of those, and she was smoking hot. And we shot a movie called Curse of Alcatraz way back in the day. And we actually, the cool story about Curse of Alcatraz was we got to spend the night in Alcatraz. So, yeah, it was so great. So basically we made a deal with the park rangers. That was another, super small indie movie. And they said, you can film on the island, because Alcatraz is an island. I'm sure most people know that, but for those who don't, it's literally a shark island. It's an island surrounded by sharks in the San Francisco Bay Area, freezing cold waters, and there's apparently a bunch of sharks there as well. And they said, sure, you guys can stay there, but you got to bring all your gear. You get one ferry over. You can spend the night, and you'll get one ferry back in the morning. And if anything happens, it's on you, because we're not ever coming to get you. You're basically stranded for, 24 hours on the island, which was awesome. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, they would probably never do that again, because the risk is just too great. But for whatever reason, back then they did it. So we literally shot the film on Alcatraz. The guy gave me the keys. He gave the park ranger gave me the keys, and he was like, this goes to this building, this goes to this, because it was empty. It was basically just for tourists.
Yeah.
They had a gift shop, but everything else, it's pretty much gutted. There's not much there. Like, it's not like we could have stolen anything. We're on an island anyway.
Yeah.
So, in between filming, it was a crazy long night, because we're pretty much going 24 hours. But whenever we had a break, I would grab the keys and a couple people, and we'd be like, we're gonna go check out XYZ, and it was awesome, man. I got such crazy creepy feelings in that place. And there's like a hole in the ground in the back where they showed us, where it's like I don't know how deep it was, maybe about 6 feet deep, and they, at one point, they would throw prisoners in there, so they would be standing up. Imagine being naked with a bunch of dudes standing in this trench in your own piss and shit and vomit and whatever else, and that's where they would be. It was basically had a grate over the top of it. It was like their it wasn't solitary confinement, but it was like where they just kind of taught you a lesson. So the park ranger was showing us that, and There was some brutal shit happened there at that place, man.
I mean, it's like they usually say the solitary confinement is referred to as the hole, and like it's a legitimate hole.
It was a legitimate hole, man. It was so crazy, and the creepiest part of that place for me, there's like I don't remember the name of it, but there's like this entrance hall where everyone would come in when they would first take them off the boat, and they would just put them in this long hallway. And I remember there was a huge hallway, and there was like a giant cafeteria off to the side before they kind of divvy them up into cells and stuff. And for whatever reason, that giant atrium, for lack of a better word, where they would kind of put them all there, just gave me the creepiest fucking vibes, man. And that the wardens were telling us a bunch of stories, and they were like, yeah, pretty much people have been killed or attempted to be killed in almost every part of this prison. So there's no place that's kind of safe in here. If you believe in spirits or bad juju, it's all over this place, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, I've only seen it. I've never physically been to Alcatraz, but I've been to the Bay in San Francisco. So like I've seen it from afar, and that's creepy enough.
Oh man, it's creepy. You should go if post COVID you ever get the opportunity.
There's that.
It also was, I think, I'm probably mixing my history up. I can't remember if it was originally a Native American thing, but I know at one point they had taken it over. I want to say in the 60s, and they basically just took the island over and were protesting probably civil rights or whatever. And so there's a lot of Native American history there as well. But
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's crazy though, man. It's just, you think about the shit and imagine that, like they're on an island, and this is before like cameras and internet and shit. So anything could go down. Like who's gonna know? You know, like you could beat a fucking prisoner to death and say you got a flu. Like who's gonna know? You're on an island. Like no one's. Like,
and I imagine that happened probably a bunch.
I imagine so. Yeah.
That's kind of the nice thing. And this is going to sound really dark, but it's like the nice thing about pre-internet, pre-camera, pre-24/7 surveillance is like you never really know what happened.
Yeah.
That gray area just makes, I don't know, I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
Not the ability to be able to beat someone without being caught, but more so the fact like, you know, like I didn't get a cell phone until I could drive, and it was really all you could do was call with the thing, and it was so that if something happened, I could get a hold of my parents.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad that my formative years were not recorded.
I agree. Like I remember having a list of people's phone numbers on a piece of paper in my wallet when I would go out. So to call someone, I had their numbers.
Yeah, totally, man.
So much nicer back then. But
I remember, you know, I'll do one further. I remember the pager days when you would get a page and you'd go to a payphone to call the. Sometimes you didn't even know the number because you'd be like, it must be important if they're paging me.
A buddy of mine's dad was like, he owned all the McDonald's in the city that I grew up in. And he would page his dad once in a while, and then the phone would ring, and he would just be like, "Oh, this is so-and-so, you paged me."
Yeah, exactly. It's so absurd to think about back in the day. I remember bringing this back to production. For half of my career, fax machines were like the biggest thing. So we would have to fax call sheets. You know, we have a call sheet. It's a front and back, huge, long document. And then we usually have a map, and then sometimes we have special instructions or whatever. And we would have a list of every night about anywhere from 30 to 50 people that we would have to fax because they weren't physically on set that day. They might have been studio heads or whatever, day whatever, or day plane crew. So we'd have to fax them. And fax is like, sometimes they go through, sometimes they don't. Sometimes one page goes, sometimes page 1 and page 4 goes through, and 2 and 3 are missing. Like it was so fucked. Like thinking about it in hindsight, it was horrible. Like and that would come out like, you know, that usually came out, they would end shooting. So let's say it's 10 p.m. they finished shooting for the day. And then it took the AD maybe another hour or 2. So it's like usually around midnight on a normal day. That's on a good day. It's midnight, and you're faxing people who have to be there at probably 7 a.m. in the morning. So you're fucking ringing their fax machine, usually at their home. So yeah, it was was fun.
It's always interesting to hear stories like that. Like the first one of these we did was with a buddy of mine, Kevin, who works for AMC TV station.
Oh yeah.
And he's like talking about the editing process. And he goes, well, usually the assistant can't leave until that guy, because we talked a lot about data. Not a lot. It would probably felt like longer than it was, but it was like, now that everything's on a hard drive, there's 2 hard drives that go to different directions.
Yep.
And it's like the guy that has to copy the data to that hard drive can't move his computer until that data is copied. And then the table that's sitting on can't get put away until the guy is done copying the data. So the person from the theater who is sitting there waiting for the guy to finish copying data to a hard drive so he can put the table away, he goes, that guy's got to get paid while he just stands there and waits to put the table away. I'm like, this is fucking unreal. Like, you think about it, it's like, oh, you're done. Everyone just goes home. It's like there's all the stuff that goes into it that I never even thought of, including faxing call sheets at midnight.
That's right.
So, it makes sense, though. I mean, the process has to happen somehow.
Yeah, people needed to know how to get there, and you can't call. And again, this was before cell phones, so it's not like you can't call them on their cell phone. So you would either have to wake them up, or they would have a fax machine, tucked away in their office somewhere, and they would know it would be there. And they'd wake up at 5 a.m. knowing that they most likely had to be there at 6 or 7.
Yeah, but what happens if it's not there when they wake up at 5 a.m.?
Yeah, things definitely happen. There were definitely issues and that was a great excuse because you could just go, well, shit, I never got the call sheet. And we sent it. It said there was no error. That was all you knew. It would say okay, or it would say error. That was your only 2 choices.
That's the thing. Like, fax technology is similar to printing. Like, it's very archaic, and it either works or it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, you don't really know why it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it's the worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah. Like, even to this day, my mom will text me a picture. And it's like some error on her printer. Well, what does this mean? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know. Like, just, turn it off, turn it back on.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Back to Shark Island.
Yes.
So you, I guess, my first question is, why did you decide to go under a different name? Like, I see that the character you play is the same name as the director's nickname. Is that part of the whole?
Yeah, I got a fun little story about that. So you remember back when people would say, how you get your porn name, and one of those was like your childhood pet in the street you grew up on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first dog I had was like, it looked kind of like a little miniature Scooby-Doo type animal. Mm-hmm. Named Scruffy. And I grew up on Edgewood Circle in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. So that's how I picked the name. Stephen is my middle name, Stephen. So Stephen Scruffy Edgewood is my porn name, essentially. And the reason I chose it was, again, I have a long storied career in the business. I've been legitimized by my peers as a producer and an actor and et cetera, mm-hmm. But that's like in the big studio world, right? That's in like the professional world. And I knew from the onset that this was going to be a super low budget movie, and it wasn't going to have all the bells and whistles and stuff. The Incantation, which I directed, also was a low budget movie, but we had a lot of huge production value there with the castle, and we shot in France and all kinds of stuff. So, and I wrote that film, and it was my calling card. So I wanted my name all over it, despite the budget limitations. This one, it's not that I don't want my name on it. It's that I have to differentiate between the two, right? So, I put the pseudonym, the stage name, if you will, on it because I want there to be 2 of me. I want there to be the guy that can go up for the Emmys and the Oscars and has all the statues and the credentials. And I want the guy that can also fuck around and shoot an indie shark movie as well. So that's why I did it, because I feel like in our industry, you can't have both, like you're either this huge conglomerate business entity, or you become that, like Robert Rodriguez became that, mm-hmm. Quentin Tarantino became that after the fact. but they didn't start that way. But they could never go back, right? Like Quentin Tarantino cannot now make a movie. He could not make Shark Island now because he's Quentin Tarantino. And same with Robert Rodriguez. They would have to do it under a pseudonym. So I'm basically trying to get ahead of that curve and separating that. And some of the other people on the film have done that, and some people do that as well. Now, if I thought it was a shitty movie, there is a name. God, I can't remember the name. There's a name that directors use. God, what is that name? There's like a pseudonym that directors use when the movie is like really horrible or they hate it. They don't want to be attached to it. And so you'll see that guy's name on a bunch of movies.
I never knew that.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up. God, it escapes me right now, but it's a very common.
Alan Smithy?
Yeah, Alan Smithy. Okay. Yep. So that is usually used when like you're fighting with the studio, or you're like, this script is shit, or I don't want my name anywhere near this. They use Alan Smithy.
The official pseudonym used by film directors who wish to disown a project. I like that.
There you go. That's a perfect explanation. So I don't want to disown this project. I think it's fun. I think it's great. And for the budget, I mean, it's a schlocky shark movie with hot models. Like it is what it's supposed to be. So it's nothing to be embarrassed by.
No, and I think nowadays any movie, like there's truly no absolutely bad movies. Like I think you'll find people will either like it for what it is, they'll like it because it isn't the greatest. Like consider Manos in the Hands of Fate. It's probably the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life, but it has this huge cult following. You know, they made the second one, they made a video game, and it's like, so even if something is complete trash, it will find favor in some circle.
Absolutely. And I like that. That's perfect. You said it perfectly, because, you know, like I said, a lot of these big companies like Dread Central and all those have put out the trailer. And it, you know, there's that saying like, call a spade, and they're doing that. And I love it. Like, it's like, let's have fun with this. Like it's a schlocky shark movie. There's a bunch of half naked women in it. It's a tropical environment, and there's going to be some bloody kills, and it's awesome. Like, that's great. That's what we want, you know, like it's an escape from the pandemic. So, I like that. Like, I'm totally fine with that.
So you'd mentioned obviously the pandemic, and you shot this during the pandemic. How?
Well, I shot something else during the pandemic. We shot this a little before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'm going to assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the post-production of a film during the pandemic, probably not a big deal because most people are at home or, you know, wherever. Yeah. But how, I do want to talk about like how filming during the pandemic happened or worked out, but I don't want to get too far from Shark Island because there's probably more to talk about there.
Sure. We can cover it briefly. So I was on a big Netflix series in Atlanta, which at that time became a hotbed. If you remember, there was a time when Atlanta was like the epicenter before LA became the epicenter. So we were on a big show on Netflix with a very big name. I'm
guessing you can't say it.
I don't know if I can or not.
Just let me know and we can announce it, and then we'll I was going to say, because if I want to give credit where credit's due, so if you're able to say what it is.
Yeah.
But let me know when you can, and we'll announce it.
Let's just say it's a big show that had one of the kids from Stranger Things in it. Okay. And then they could figure out the rest.
Yeah.
But so we were in the middle of shooting this show, and when the pandemic hit. So it was really weird because I think back to a year ago, and it kind of came in waves, pun intended, where you were like, oh, this is not so bad. Oh, this is just the flu. And then it was like, oh, it's cool. We only, as long as we have 10 people at a party, it's fine. And like these things kept coming and coming. Then eventually like paranoia went all the way up, the needle went all the way, and it was like, you cannot fucking breathe, like you can't touch another person, like if you got to spray down your groceries, like we went to that whole thing. So there was like these varying levels of panic, and we were shooting during that. So essentially what happened was we were shooting, and we slowly, that panic gripped the set and shut us down eventually. So that was, maybe all that stuff started in March and we shut down in April, because by April, it came to a point where people were just leaving. And I remember we were in Atlanta and the mayor put out a thing saying, no businesses can work. Everybody's got to shut down. You got to stay in your homes. It was like a stay-at-home order in Atlanta. Like it was pandemonium, chaos, and panic. So that happened. We shut down all the way till after July 4th. And Netflix is a huge company, so they're not going to make any missteps. They have a huge liability. They're going to do it by the book, and they're going to do it right. Mm-hmm. And to their credence, to this day, they're still among the leaders among shooting in a pandemic right by all accounts of cast and crew that I know of. Mm-hmm. But we were the guinea pigs for that because we were in it. Like no one could tell you how to shoot during a pandemic because no one had done it before. This was a totally brand new thing. So we came back after July, and we were learning on the fly. Cut to now, and a lot of those kinks have been worked out by productions like us, but we were one of the first. But like nobody knew. No one knew. Like the CDC was changing stuff every day. They would come out with another. Oh, this is okay. This is not. Now it's aerosol. Now it's airborne. Now it's not. Now, it just kept constantly changing. So we eventually went back into production. We had all the things, COVID compliance officers. We each got, I can't tell you how many courses I took online. I think I had 18 certificates at one point. We're doing we got the PPE, we got temperature checks. We did COVID testing 3 times a week they do zones, right? So they do like ABC, actors are A, they're in the main zone, and anyone that's in around actors, which is like camera people, makeup and hair, they're at zone A, and then on out, like sort of like an epicenter of an earthquake going outward. Mm-hmm. And the people on the far outside, like editorial and those people, they only get tested once a week. Everyone else gets 3 times a week. And they have to get tested before they go to set. Like it's an ongoing thing. Then the unions got involved. They wanted to start fighting. They wanted to get paid for testing. What if they lost work? Did they get paid for downtime? La da da da. So it just kept going and going. And eventually we got shut down a second time. Well, we didn't get shut down. Netflix decided after, we got a few positive cases, and they finally said, okay, the risk now at this point, they got a team of doctors and lawyers and the best advice. And they said, okay, at this point, it's not worth it for us to continue. And so we ended up, we still got a couple more episodes in the can, but we didn't get our full episodes that we had originally wanted, but it was insane. It's still a risk, but it's like nowadays, it's even beefier. People know a lot more than they knew a year ago. There's these companies that, again, those companies were just burgeoning. They were just starting out then because no one had known about it. So you had all these companies that were trying to, you had half of the good companies trying to figure it out. You had half of the other companies trying to make a quick buck. We didn't know shit, right? You had those, and you didn't know who was who. There's no way of telling because it was all new. So now that's mostly weeded out because the cream always rises to the top. So now the professionals who are doing it right are still in business. They're not overcharging. They know at least what to do to film. Again, it's all relatively safely. So the bottom line now is to wrap this whole thing up is that yes, you can shoot during a pandemic. It's possible. And even then, like when we started, actors were like, I want hazard pay. This is ridiculous. Like every imaginable scenario happened. But now you can do it. People understand. Agents understand. Actors understand. Crew members understand. There's now been guidelines established, etc. But I will tell you this. If you think you're going to shoot a movie, even an indie movie, you better have a contingency for COVID preparation, money-wise, financially wise, because even the bare minimum required, even on an indie with your buddies, is more than you think it is. So that's I guess that's the moral of this story. So it's really hard to get anyone who's semi-professional now because everyone knows what's going on, and people aren't going to risk it for no money. And even if they risk it, you still got to, at the very bare minimum, you got to have some testing, PPE, temperature checks, et cetera, in place. And it's not free. Like, where does that money come from? Like, you got to have that stuff, right? So that's been hard on the industry. It's been difficult all the way up and down the board because there's just a huge amount of new costs associated with shooting that weren't there before.
Has like the cost of testing gone down?
Yeah, so like, all the price gouging has, for the most part, gone away. Everything's faster, and not cheaper, but not inflated either. So it's kind of like leveled out. And people's expectations, they know what to expect now as far as testing, test turnarounds, what is and not allowed, what the risks are involved, how they're going to be compensated if and when XYZ happens. All that stuff has kind of worked itself out, but it's been crippling. It's been crippling for the industry. Like the big series, like the Netflix series type stuff is still going on, but like, movies have slowed down tremendously. They've come to almost a standstill, and indies are crippled because, again, who's going to have that money if you're on an indie budget to pay for all this extra COVID stuff, like, and even if it's your buddies, like, what if you got 10 of your buddies, but what if one of them gets sick and then sues you? Like, I mean, it's just, shit can happen. It's not worth it. You know what I mean? So, and that's just a different,
it's interesting to see how the pandemic has affected everything. So I get kind of part-time job, more of a hobby, but I do the website and ticketing for an independent wrestling promotion in town.
Oh, right.
So it's like I got brought on right when this stopped because they needed to find a way to do something online interactive because they had to stop all their shows. Well, even as everything changes and like ticketing and how do people sit and wearing masks and having all this shit and like trying to tell people that like, yeah, I'm sorry that you have to wear a mask, but would you rather fucking kill someone? But then that paired with like going home for the holidays and it's like, talking to my wife and like, how do we handle, stay home for 10 days before we go home for Christmas so that I don't get my parents sick because, they're 70 and it's just like, But then, so like I guess my favorite part about all this is the fact that new movies that come out are just available on quote unquote online the day that they get released.
Yeah,
I was never like huge for going to sit in a movie theater because there's always one person that annoys the shit out of me. But it's like I do really enjoy new movies, obviously. So like that's been really neat. But I still don't think that like at some point something's got to give. Like the $20 watch a movie on your couch is completely different than a $20 movie in a theater.
100%.
So that price needs to come down or whatever. But then that price is justified to pay for everything. So I guess the nice thing overall is that we found ways to kind of adjust how media gets released and how we film it and how we produce it and all that, which I think will make a big change in the future as we know it. Because even when this is over, like, I don't know if people are going to want to be out in droves anymore. I'm sure there'll still be a large amount, but
yeah, I think, man, I have so much to say about all of that stuff you just said. I think many things. I think it won't really ever go back. Like you always hear people saying, well, no one's going to blow out birthday candles anymore. Like there's always going to be something now. There will be bird flu and COVID-21 and whatever. Like we just can't go back. It's like after 9/11, security changed forever. Now our hygiene has changed forever, for good or for worse, or whatever you want to call it. Our perception. That's one thing. Two, I shot in India a lot. I spent a cumulative 2 years of my life filming in India for this guy named Kamal Hassan. He's a big South Indian star. And way back then, I'm talking 2010, at least 10 years ago, maybe 2006 even. That guy, among others in India, were pushing to have, let's call it a universal international release on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
A digital release and a theatrical release on the same day. They were pushing then, and they were always got fought by someone. And those people who are fighting it are the theaters, obviously. And that happened in America too, in North America. In North America, I don't know if you heard about like the Trolls movie, the Trolls 2 thing that happened. Basically, I might be mixing a little bit of this up, but the gist of it is, it was Trolls 2. I want to say it was either Sony or Warner Brothers, one of those, a big conglomerate, and AMC. And basically, AMC was like, they had a release date set for Trolls 2. Mm-hmm. And they were going to release it in all theaters the traditional way, in the theaters, and then it eventually in a month or so it gets released digitally and blah blah blah. And that time came and went, and they were closed down because of COVID. None of the theaters were open, and whoever it was, Sony or Warner Brothers, whoever, the studio said, fuck it, we're going to release it anyways. We can't wait, we can't lose the money, like, we're ready to do it. And they released it, and it made a shit ton of money. And that basically was a big nail in the coffin of the theaters. Yeah. And then AMC got pissed. There was nothing they could do, but they were basically said, we'll never show another one of your movies again, blah, 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 blah. But that was a turning point because, you know, if you look at the history, I'm reading a book now by Daryl F. Zanuck, who basically started Fox. He started writing at Warner Brothers, and then he worked at Fox, and then he basically created 20th Century Fox. And then his son, Richard Zanuck, took it over, and then it became what it is today. So I'm reading a biography of his life. Where was I going with this? but man, I forgot my train of thought. But yeah, so
Trolls 2 made a shitload of money, digital release.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the fight between the studios and the theaters, like, they work hand in hand until they don't. But it becomes like a mafia thing. You know, it's like the Teamsters and the theaters and the studio. It's all great when it's all copacetic and it's working the way it's supposed to. But when anyone along the chain gets cut out, i.e. the theater chain at this point, of course they're going to get fucking pissed because it's their livelihood and stuff. So that's basically what happened now. But the result of that, like you said, is just same day or same week openings across every medium possible. Like, and that's great for the audience member, because maybe you can't go to a theater. Maybe you don't want to go to a theater. But it'd be great to be able to see whatever XYZ Marvel, you know, whatever gigantic thing you want to see, that without having that roadblock of waiting a month or two down the road. So I think that's a big bonus that's come out of it for the movie viewer. And if COVID goes away, then theaters, hopefully they'll come back and you'll still have that option. It's like we still have bowling alleys, you know, like you can still go to a bowling alley, but you can also stay at home and play Twitch. Like, you have options now, and that's good for the consumer. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I saw a meme since you mentioned bowling a while back, and it was like, do you remember like 10 years ago where you'd go bowling and put your hands into a bowling ball that you didn't know where it had been, and then eat nachos with the same hand, and then lick the cheese off your fingers? True. And it really is. Like, I grew up bowling, so like that really struck a chord with me. But it is funny to think about how no one used to give a shit about where their hands would be, other than, you know, you go to a bathroom, you wash them. But it's like, what would you touch in between? And then what would you then eat without washing your hands? And now everyone's so hyper aware. I think it's better this way, but also it's like, man, I think it's concerning how the vast majority just lives in ignorance until something bad happens.
Yeah, or they politicize it, like the whole mask thing. I mean, that was huge. Like I said, when we came back to do that Netflix show I was on in Atlanta, you know, that was a red state prior to this last election. And I grew up in Georgia, so I'm very familiar with that whole mentality down there. But people were offended that you were telling them to wear a mask, and a lot of them still are. And so how fucking hard was that for us to shoot a movie when half of your crew is like, I don't fucking want to wear a mask, or who are you to tell me to wear a mask? Like, you know, it's just so difficult. It's so much more difficult to do your job. Luckily, we were good. I'm not saying my crew was like that, but just that mentality in general is out there still.
Oh yeah, God, it's not. It's depending on where you are. Obviously, I live in the state of Wisconsin, towards the north. Depending on where you are in the state, like the bigger cities, it's different. It's more of that like understanding. But out here, like I could drive past a bar in an hour and a half, and that fucker's gonna be packed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like when the Packers were in the playoffs. There was pictures of the bars around the stadium, and everyone jam packed in there without masks on. And it's like I don't like wearing them either. It's not like I'm a fan of it, but it's like if it makes that little old lady that I walk past in the grocery store or at the gas station feel better and more comfortable to be out, and I don't get someone sick, like it is a small price to pay to be a decent human being.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, man.
Yeah, and it's not an infringement on your rights. Like other countries have been wearing masks when they have a cold for long, long times.
Oh man, you know, my wife and I joke about this all the time, but like, you know, I live in Thailand, and people here have been wearing masks forever. Like just going outside, it's just like it's like an everyday natural thing. Like China, all Southeast Asian countries, they do it anyways. They're so far ahead of the curve just because it's smart. Between air pollution and contaminants, like wear a fucking mask. Like, you know what I mean?
And you know what the worst part about wearing a mask is that if I just ate onions, I just breathe my own onion breath. It's not that big of a fucking deal.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, good stuff. So true. I love your shirt, by the way, man. What is that? I love that.
The band Death.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they did a Halloween sweatshirt, and since it's awesome. Cold 6 months, 9 months out of the year here.
Right. I just bought a Danny Elfman. He did a like skeleton thing. I'm a huge Danny Elfman, Tim Burton fan, like that whole vibe. And
I could tell by your hat.
Oh yeah. You see, you got that. That's awesome. I'm normal. If you look behind me on my shelf, there's like at least 10 Jack Skellington things. They're everywhere.
Oh, okay. Okay. I caught a few. I just didn't realize how many there were.
Oh, my whole apartment is filled with them. They're everywhere.
That's awesome.
Which is funny because Thais are very superstitious. Like they believe in ghosts and bad spirits and bad juju and all that. So normally they wouldn't have skeletons and stuff. And I have them everywhere. So that was
I was like, I gotta process that one. But my wife started collecting like taxidermied animals.
Oh, crazy.
So like for our wedding anniversary, I got her a squirrel. I think it's a squirrel, but it's like made up to look like a zombie.
Oh, it's so cool.
And then she has like some baby ducks that are wearing like a cape and a witch's hat, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, so this year for Valentine's Day, I got her like a mystery box, and it has 2 like duck butts, and one says butt quack, and the other one says I'm duck and adorable.
Oh man.
And then there was we never figure out what animal it is, but it is the fucking thing's like this long, and it's got like a beanbag inside of it so you can pose it, and it's just like covered in blood. And it just fucking sits there and we're like, I don't know what to do with this. But I'm like, well, we'll find it at home eventually.
Like it was a roadkill or something? Like
I don't know. I don't know. It's black. It might be a mink. I'm not sure.
Oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I got a tie-in of this whole thing for you.
Okay.
Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin Badgers and Go Pack Go and all that. So my friends are from Green Bay. My really best friends, like they're like my secondary family. They live in LA. And one year, I don't know what year it was, but down the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, Wisconsin was playing whoever, maybe Nebraska or somebody. I can't remember who they were playing. And they have a taxidermied badger in their house. And it's like, it's the pelt, but it has the head and everything, right? So it's flat, it lays flat, but it has the full head with the teeth and all that. So I went to that game, the Rose Bowl, and I wore that thing on my head, that badger pelt on my head. I'll send you this GIF because the GIF is out there.
Yeah.
And you know, whoever ESPN or whoever was televising the game, they saw it. Like they saw that I was wearing that, so they bring the camera up, and right after a touchdown, I have a beer, and like I make the badger drink out of the beer, and then I drink the beer. and the camera shot it, and it was on the broadcast. So
I feel like when I see this GIF, I'm gonna remember it.
Oh, you will remember it, yeah, because somebody did an article on it. Because the funny thing is, I had nothing that said I was a Georgia fan on me. Like I had a jacket on and I had whatever. Like I didn't have anything. I'm from Georgia. I graduated from UGA. Mm-hmm. So the guy in the article says, clearly this is an SEC guy, and all this stuff. But I'll send it to you because it's out there. It's online. It's That's great. Funny. And it has the gif of me like dipping the mattress head in there.
I never realized that you had close friends, because like I'm about 40 minutes out of Green Bay.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, they just bought a second, like a summer home there too, on the lake somewhere, but I can't remember the town's name. But yeah, I went with them twice, I think, to Green Bay. One was in January, the first time that Brett Favre said he was going to retire, when they really thought he would retire the first time. Mm-hmm. I was at that home game, like his last game. So it was like snowing and all that. It was sometime in January, I think. And, he hugged everybody goodbye because they just assumed he was going to retire. And then I don't think he did or whatever, but it's a great experience. It's such a fun.
Yeah. I'm not a huge football fan. I'm like and this makes me sound more of a degenerate than I am, but it's like I like gambling. So it's like I play fantasy football to try and take people's money, and then I do a spreads league with all the guys in my band to take their money. So it's perfect. Like I'm invested only to be a dick to my friends.
It's great.
But we do, like, my wife is a diehard Packer fan, so it's like we try to go to a Packer game once a year. Obviously this year excluded, but it's like even not liking football a ton, going to that stadium and that whole like process is enjoyable because it's special. Because most people, people don't understand that Lambeau Field is just in like the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, a guy I used to work with lives a block and a half away, so like we would just park in his yard, and then you just walk, walk the block and a half, and then you fucking leave at the end. But it's interesting. I've never been to a different. I shouldn't say that. I've been to U.S. Bank, but it wasn't for a game.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I'm a Raiders fan because there was a time when I worked in Oakland for a long period of my life, and I became a Raiders fan, and that's a whole nother experience because Wisconsin, it's like everyone's family. It's like we're all, but in Raiders are like, like if you're not one of us, we're gonna cut your throat, basically. And but in a fun way until it's not a fun way.
Yeah.
But I took my buddy there, that same guy there, and there was a night after Brett Favre's father passed away, and he played Oakland Raiders the next day, or maybe the same day even. I can't remember, but it was
the next day.
It was the next day.
Yeah.
So I was at that game. That was at Oakland Coliseum, and I took my buddy, and he wore his Favre jersey. Now this isn't a sea of black jerseys for the Raiders. Very aggressive fans, very belligerent fans. That's a good word to call them. And the Oakland cops came up to him because he's getting, people in his face like, "You fucker, I'll kill you," like all that, but drunk and joking, not really threatening. Still, it's when you got thousands of people, it's a bit daunting. The cops are like, "Hey, you want us to fill out your report now?" So Brett Favre, anyways, that game he kills it. He was throwing like 60-yard passes, and it was just a very emotional game. They killed the Raiders. Like it was something like, I don't know, 47-6 or some shit like that. It was ridiculous. And after that game, not one person gave him shit because they were like, damn, it was like, even the Raider fans were like, Jesus, that was such a monumental event. And people, NFL fans to this day still talk about that particular game. It was just because of his father dying and his performance. Like it was just a crazy, insane thing to witness,
And it was, the funny thing is, you say like Raider fans recognized a great performance and were okay with it. Now, if you go to a Packer Bears game,
right?
Like my wife has only let me go to one because she's convinced that I will say something and end up in a fight. And it's not that I want to fight. I'm not looking for a fight. It's just when I get beer in me and someone annoys me, like I get vocal.
Yeah, for sure.
So we went, it was 2 years ago, I think. It was when they played them at the end of September, so it's still like really warm out. and like the Bears were smoking the Packers, and we're like, well, it's just let's just leave. And then it's like by the time we get to the car, they've tied the game, and I'm like, oh shit. So it's like as we're leaving, they win, and I'm like, oh, it's fine, like it's not a big deal. But even that whole like when we parked at my coworkers, like he had some Bears fans, and they were talking shit and saying whatever, and it's just like fucking, I don't know, man. People in Chicago are a different breed. Like at least Oakland fans understand, or what in Los Angeles, now they're Las Vegas, but Raiders fans understand that we can talk shit, but at the end of the day, like whoever's better, like we'll recognize it. And the Bears just don't get it.
Right. That's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it.
That's a good point. But I guess to get back on topic a little bit.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about. Fuck. I feel like there was something else we were going to talk about, but I'm curious.
We're going to talk about the book too. We're going to talk about the book too.
Yeah, I want to do the book, and then I'm also curious about your, the screen time on The Mandalorian. So whichever one you want to talk about first.
Oh yeah, let's do The Mandalorian.
Okay. I mean, you obviously have done more than The Mandalorian, but that's maybe.
Yeah. So I got some good Mandalorian stories. So, we shot that at a place called that particular the scenes I think I'm in 2 episodes. We shot at a place called MBS, which is way down south in South LA, like an hour south of LA, Manhattan Beach Studios. And when we shot it, it was super, super hush hush. I'm sure it still is, but then it was even more so because it was the first season and no one had heard of it. I mean, they haven't seen any press release, or they didn't know about Baby Yoda or Grogu or any of that stuff. And it was pretty insane. We had to wear these black cloaks over us, so no one could see our costumes or makeup. And we had to get escorted to the bathroom. We had to give up our cell phones, like all kinds of crazy security measures, because even adjacent to the studio, there was like apartment buildings, and paparazzi would hang out hoping to get a shot of a costume or an actor or whatever. So that's one crazy thing. The cool thing is that at least I probably was on it for 2 weeks, maybe 10 days spread out over 2 weeks time. And everyone in Hollywood, all the celebrities wanted to visit the set because it's like Star Wars and it's Jon Favreau and blah, blah, blah. So every day, at one point I started keeping a list on my phone of what celebrities showed up, because it was just like every day, like 2 or 3 would show up just to see the process. They just wanted to visit the set, So that was cool. But the coolest thing, I don't know if I said this to you before, but certainly I haven't said it to your listeners here. I happened to be there. One day I was there, and I didn't have a lot of prosthetics because I was picture chosen, what they call picture chosen by my face, right? Like they liked my look. They didn't like they didn't want to bury me in prosthetic makeup and stuff. So all they did with me is they braided my beard and put some doodads in it and stuff. So but all these other people were dressed as aliens, and they had huge prosthetic, and they would take about 3 hours in the chair and stuff. So I was done relatively quickly. So one day I went to set, and I was done, and they were like, "Oh, I think we're going to start pretty soon. So why don't you just go chill on set?" So I went to chill on the set, and I saw the back of a person walk by, and I was like, "Man, is that who I think it is? It's crazy." So I went onto the set, and I just waited, and I got on set, and there was 3 people on that set, and I was one of them. The other 2 were Jon Favreau, and the other one was George Lucas.
Oh shit!
So George Lucas and Jon Favreau were sitting there having a conversation, and I was like, "Holy fuck, that was George Lucas!" So they were having a conversation, and I was like, "Man, I really shouldn't be here." So I was like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. The production told me to come hang out here. Do you want me to leave?" And they were like, "No, man, it's totally cool. Just hang out." So I hung out with him. I didn't hang out with him. I hang out adjacent to them. But, I could hear all their conversation, all that good stuff. But the reason George was there, I guess he had come a couple of times, but he was only there once over the period I was there. And the reason he was there that day was it was Jon Favreau's birthday. So he had came that morning and he brought some, I think he has some vineyards called Lucas Vineyards or Skywalker Vineyards or whatever he has. So he had brought some of his best wine or champagne or whatever he has to Jon Favreau. And then once we started rolling, we had a big happy birthday, John, and the whole deal. And George Lucas stayed for the whole morning, basically till lunch. So probably, close to 6 hours.
Wow.
And then he left. But that was just a cool little serendipitous moment that I would have never have met George Lucas had it not been for that particular day, So that was just I have all kinds of things that happened to me. And like one time I did almost the exact same scenario. I walked on a set and it was Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise on Minority Report having a conversation. I was actually there to visit one of my friends who was a transportation person, and they had broken for lunch. And those two had stayed back to discuss whatever they were discussing, the scene or whatever. So all the crew had left, and I walked in like an idiot going, hey. Oh, and I'm like, I literally, I got the deer in the headlights like, oh, shit, I'm going to leave. And they're like, no, what do you need? And I was like, I'm looking for lunch. And he's like, Spielberg's like, yeah, just go down that hallway, take a right, left, whatever. So again, I have, someday I'll write a book about my just little crazy experiences like that in Hollywood. I mean, I've hung with a ton of celebrities. I've gotten close with some, and I've had crazy experiences with others. But I just had so many crazy things, cool things that happened to me. Mm-hmm. That's the fun part of the industry. Like, it's very demanding industry. Long hours, a lot of stress. I was all gray by the time I was like 30. Just super, super stressful work. But every once in a while, you fucking walk in on George Lucas and Jon Favreau. So those little things are cool.
So you mentioned being picture picked or whatever it was called for Mandalorians. Like, do you have an acting agent?
Yeah, I do.
So
I have a.
Sorry, so the reason I was asking is just how to word the question, but it's like, did your agent submit you for this, or do they just go and look at a bunch of pictures of people from specific, like, is there an actor database and they just start scrolling through pictures?
Yeah, they have those, like Central Casting has those. So like, I think the reason I was picture picked because that the main scene that I was in is we're bounty hunters, what they call human bounty hunters. So we're basically space pirates. Mm-hmm. So they want dudes that can look like a space pirate. So you got to have a mean looking mug and a gigantic beard doesn't hurt. And the fact that you're 6'2" is also a bonus, right? So I think all those things, like, I think for me in that particular show, they probably didn't give a shit about acting ability. They were more concerned with, does this guy look like a mean motherfucker that can play as someone that's chasing the actual Mandalorian to kill him. Like, so that's a picture, as opposed to, there's all kinds of different casting. Like, that's one way. There's also like, auditions and open calls, or the director knowing of you and saying, dude, we seen this guy's real, or we seen this guy's work, bring him in. So there's a wide gamut of things. But for Mandalorian, I think it was basically my look that got me in the door, and then they chose me, and then they re-chose me when I was there. They chose me for the second episode. God, what's her name? The Asian director there.
That's a question I would ask you.
Shoot. Well, I feel like a fool.
Don't.
Let me see. I'll look it up real quick. We have the internet, but she chose me to come back for the next scene, because basically I was in the episode with Werner Herzog and Pedro Pascal and all that when he first meets him in the bar. Not Werner Herzog. Sorry, not Werner Herzog. Carl
Weathers.
Carl Weathers, yeah.
Okay.
So it was Carl Weathers. So that was the original scene that I was cast for. And then of those people, so there was probably 40 of us that were, no, less than that. There was probably 20 of us that looked like humans. The rest were aliens. Everyone else was a droid or an alien or whatever. And then after that, they wanted us to come back for the big shootout, the giant scene where all the Mandalorians come down out of the sky. Mm-hmm. And there's a Wild Wild West shootout and all that. And the director chose me, only like 5 of us. And then I happened to befriend the guy. There's a guy, I'm forgetting all their names now, but there's a guy who, whenever C-3PO is needed and they can't afford the actor, you know, so like maybe to walk the red carpet or whatever, mm-hmm. They hire this guy because he's got the droid. He's the same build. He can do the accent, and he's got the droid. He's like trained in the droid movements, like down to a T, right? So he's basically the stand-in, but he makes a living out of it, like a really good living, because all these events, any event that you see, even if it's the Muppet Show or whatever, or it's mm-hmm. like a red carpet event, or it's a Star Wars rollout, anything, it's that guy normally. So he played one of the droids. There's a droid that has a big like fly bug face on the top of him. Mm-hmm. If you saw that episode, so he played that guy because he's got the droid movements down. So he was in the full droid costume with the big fly head on it. And he and I befriended each other and spent a lot of time on set, and it was great. And he was like, he was just like, man, you know, director just got some really good shots of you, really good tracking shots of you, and blah blah blah. Like he was just a super nice guy.
The director you were talking about was Deborah Chow.
Deborah Chow, yeah, she was really great. She was great. So it was awesome, man, because she was awesome, and Dave Filoni was basically, when my experience in the couple weeks I was there, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. You know, Jon Favreau was like executive producer, showrunner, creator, writer, whatever. He has like 10 titles on that show. And Dave Filoni is his partner in arms. And then the directors are rotated for, you know, I think each one had 2 episodes or something like that. Mm-hmm. But John was very much in the mix, Jon Favreau, and Dave was more like Dave. From my understanding of their relationship, I could totally have it wrong, but just observing them and what I've read, John is like the very vocal, you know, kind of like larger than life guy that's saying all this stuff. And Dave is more like the quiet, encyclopedic guy that knows everything and only weighs in when he feels like he needs to say something. And then of course you have each individual director basically running that episode. So it's a cool process to watch, you know, because it's like normally on a show, you'll have one main creative and then you'll have a dozen others, but they're not like in the mix. They're either behind a monitor or they're giving script notes, or, you know, they're having 10 meetings about whatever. But this was like a 3-headed snake that's running the show, and they have to work in tandem, and they basically all have to agree with each other, you know, like it's got to be, they can't really butt heads. They could, but that wasn't my experience at all. It was like super efficient and well flowing, and it's like they could read each other's minds, and obviously all 3 were extremely professional and just amazing. Like it was a cool thing to watch. Is it normal for a show of that stature to run so well, or are they normally more of a shit show? No, not at all. Like it's like I feel like creatives can often, when I say creatives, I mean like creative producers and writers, and the plethora of people on a big show like that can often get in the way, just because it's like anything else. You have so many opinions that it weighs down the process. Unfortunately, in the film business, more and more, this group of people is getting larger. It's not getting smaller. You know, there's just more people that are having a say, that and they have to justify their job. Like I have this great story. I did Dude, Where's My Car with Danny Liner, rest in peace. And he became a great friend of mine. But back in that time, I was production secretary, and I actually auditioned for the part that Andy Dick played. That's another side note. And he really liked me for that. But and I got another Andy Dick story, but that's another side note. You know, I have to come back another day. But
absolutely.
Oh man, crazy. But Danny Liner, my example of this is exactly this. We were doing this show, Dude, Where's My Car? I think it was 20th Century Fox. I want to say maybe New Regency was in bed with him back in the day. And then each of those teams have like 10 to 15 people, right? That are considered creatives for whatever reason. So we're shooting a junkyard scene, and you know, we called liner time because we would shoot like 15 hours a day. It was a long and arduous shoot, but not arduous. It was just long and involved shoot, but very fun. Like that was one of the few shoots that felt like family. Mm-hmm. Well, this creative exec comes on set, one of the fucking 24 creative execs on the set, and literally says in this scene, you know what? I don't really like the color of those drapes. I don't think those drapes should be red. So Danny Liner, the director, who also did Harold and Kumar movies and a bunch of other shits and Sopranos, just stops the whole fucking production. And he says, get this fucking person off of my set. Who are you to tell me? Like, do you know how much work we put in? How much time has spent? We have a production designer. We spent days talking about this shit. And you're some fucking desk jockey coming here telling me to change the curtain. I don't ever fucking want to see you on my set again. Boom. That person was gone forever and disappeared, right? So that's exactly my point. That happens, unfortunately. The bigger the show, the more people are involved, the more opinions there are, and that often weighs down the process. But with this specific show, Mandalorian, I didn't. In the short time I was there, it was the exact opposite. Like they were finishing each other's sentences. You know, like it was beautiful to watch. It's like I did a scene once, a literal scene where I had 3 helicopters airborne over an airfield, like swapping positions with 500 extras below and bombs going off in a movie, a Korean movie called Sunny. It was like that. It was like just organized chaos, but like not chaos, but there's so many things happening, You got a crew of 200 people and all these sidebar conversations happening about all these things happening, but it was very efficient. And the AD staff, the assistant director staff on that Mandalorian were all women, and they were all amazing. So whatever that means, they were fucking killing it, man. Like awesome. They were really good. So I was impressed.
That's cool. You want to talk about your book? I mean, take your drink.
Gotta have that beer. I got some Jameson in case I need to start hitting that too.
I won't stop you.
Look at this cute little baby, baby Jameson bottle. Okay, so my book. So I wrote a script called. Okay, let me back up. One of my favorite stories growing up ever of all time was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, aka the Headless Horseman, right?
Yep.
a perennial favorite among Halloween buffs. Right. So like a lot of kids and a lot of people, I really love that story. So I don't remember what year it is. I'm gonna figure this out because I want to put this in the book. But a while back, maybe 2010, I guess, around then, it was Halloween, and I was in this tiny little house of my friends in Monterey Park, which is this tiny little, mostly predominantly Chinese immigrant city right outside of downtown LA. So it's very quiet and clean, and it was just a cool time for me. And I didn't have much going on, so I got a library card for the small little Monterey Park library across the street, and I checked out a bunch of Edgar Allan Poe, Washington Irving, all this, because I was in a Halloween dark kind of mode, and started reading it. And that inspired me to write a script called The Unhallowed Horseman, which ironically is going to be pitched to several big companies very soon, like within a month time now. My agent is going to start, my producer's agent is also a literary agent, and they're going to start pitching it to like A24, Screen Gems, and some other people. So that might be cool if that happens. But anyway, I wrote a script a modern day script with a contemporary twist on the Headless Horseman. So it's it takes place now. It takes place on Halloween, but it's you've never seen it before in this universe. It has not been ever happened before in this universe. So I've had that script for a while, and it's actually been greenlight and then shut down at least 3 times because people love the script, but for various reasons, that happens all the time. That's a thing that just happens. People want to make it, and then maybe an investor falls out, or COVID-19 happens, or whatever. But it's a subject matter that I love, and a story I love so much that I thought I've always wanted to write a novel. I think a lot of people feel like they can write a novel, and they want to just kind of eat the frog, as that saying goes, and do it. Mm-hmm. And this was a subject I felt passionate enough about that I could put in the time it would take to write a novel. So I just fucking did it, because like all the great writers, like Stephen King or whatever your flavor is, J.K. Rowling, or whoever the fuck, whoever you love, they all say the same thing: just write the book. You got to just get it out of your system first, no matter even if it's shitty. Like, you've got to just put in the work. You've got to regurgitate the story, puke it out, get it out there on paper. So I spent the last almost 3 months writing, and it's at a point now, it's the first manuscript is finished. It's a 95,000 word book, about 43 chapters, but it's basically, I took that script, I took that same plot line, and I used that as my outline, and then I fleshed it out. I gave more backstory. I gave the town more backstory. I gave, just a bunch of, made it a 3-dimensional story, as opposed to just a movie that happens in 90 minutes,
So is the preferred end game that the book and movie or whatever come out at the same time?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's just something that was a bonus. So now I told my agent, if you're pitching the script, also pitch the book. Like, it could be either or, but it'd be great. It's like, what movie company, let's say you're A24 or Blumhouse or whatever, why wouldn't you put out a movie and also have a book that maybe both the script and the book, maybe they need polishes, or maybe you hire whoever, maybe fucking the guy that directs, maybe Rob Zombie directs, like, who knows, but it's there. Like, the product is there, and you can do with it what you will. So yeah, that is the end game. That would be great, man. That'd be cool. So that's going to start, my agent's going to start pitching that. She said 2 weeks from now, because she's also waiting because traditionally over the holidays, studios have a cleaning, a changing of the guard, so to speak, where like all the old people get replaced and the new team comes on. And traditionally when that happens, they get rid of any projects. It's just kind of like it's like a cat pissing on it's like, all this stinks of that other cat, I'm going to piss on it and make it mine now. So they basically shut down all these projects that were in the works, and then they start afresh. So that happens whenever there's a studio change, but it traditionally happens over the holidays, which, December, January. And then it's extra, it's a little more extra because of the COVID situation. So it's like there's a bigger changing of the guard, because they're just doing sweeping mass changes, especially in the feature film divisions of a lot of studios. So she wanted to wait till all that happens, because you don't want to get something greenlit in December, January, and then the new guy comes in and is like, fuck all this stuff. We're throwing it away. So
yeah.
That was prudent on her behalf.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't really realize that happens, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
You said that's like a yearly process where they swap shit out like that?
Yeah, it happens a lot. Like, it can happen for different reasons. Like, traditionally it's on a smaller scale yearly, just rotating execs, but sometimes it happens en masse. Like if some event happens, like I remember when Disney did it with like Michael Eisner and all that, or like with the Me Too movement has happened, where you got your Harvey Weinsteins and they basically get shut down, but the company may need to still going, or they may have 20 things in production or whatever. Not the Weinstein Company specifically, but whatever company. Like it happened. It's happened a lot where, for whatever reason, they have to replace this hierarchy of people at the top. So they just flush them all out. They get rid of all the projects. They hire all the new guys. They start a whole new slate of pictures. So it's a very common occurrence in the film world, in the studio world.
I mean, it seems like an insane thing to do because it's not like you can just start up a movie like real quick. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
I'll tell you a little side story here. It's all about money, man. I was on a movie. I can't remember the name, but we started shooting in Reno and Las Vegas. It was a $20 million budget for, it was either Fox Searchlight or Fox 2000 back in the day. And it was a casino movie with the kings of comedy, who are the African-American guys. So it's like Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, and the other two guys. D.L. Hughley, and there's one other, Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac, yep, there you go.
So it's those four guys, right? So we spent 10% of the budget. We spent $2 million. We started building sets. We had crew coming in, blah, blah, blah. Right at that time, Ocean's 11, the original Ocean's 11 announced that they were going in production with Brad Pitt, George Clooney, blah, 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 blah. Julia Roberts. So Fox said, we can't fucking compete with those. We can't have a casino heist movie with the kings of comedy versus Julia Roberts, Brad Pitt, and George Clooney. It's just not going to fucking happen. So you know what they did? They said, losing $2 million is better than losing $20 million. They just cut it loose and shut it down, and that was it.
I wish I had $2 million.
Isn't that crazy? Like, imagine that. I can make 10 movies.
What? That's funny though. I mean, I guess like the logic checks out when you're throwing around that much money and you're bringing in that much money. That losing 2 million is better than losing 20.
Yeah.
But why not just wait? Like, why not shoot the movie and then sit on it for 6 months and then release it staggered from Ocean's 11? I don't know. The movie business is such a fast pace. It's like, because what's happening is studios are trying to gauge what audience members want, and that's fucking impossible. It's like trying to put a thumbtack in flowing water. It's impossible. Like, there's no way to know what's in 3 months, what's going to be, what people are going to love. And now people hate comic book movies, you know, like 1 minute everything's a comic book movie, the next minute it's like another fucking comic book movie. Like, the audience is so fickle, so they're not going to waste any time backing a horse that is half submerged already in water. Like, if it's a dead horse, it's a dead horse, move on. That's just their mentality. Yeah, which it makes sense. But since you mentioned that everything moves so quick, have you seen The Little Things?
I have seen The Little Things, yeah.
So question behind this being that it was written 30 years ago, was supposed to come out 30 years ago, came out now, and they didn't really change anything. Like,
yeah,
how, from your point of view, like, first of all, I'm curious if you like the movie, because I have feelings about it.
Right. I have some feelings about it. Like, yeah, where do you want to start with that one?
Well,
like,
that's the thing. Like, another full-blown 2-hour-long conversation. But like, the best thing that I can say about the movie, if you haven't seen it and you don't want to hear, then turn this off, I guess. But it was written, 1991? It would have been.
Yeah.
And I gotta do some date checking here. But the movie 7, 95. The movie 7 came out 4 years later, and this movie feels very 70.
Yeah, well, I got plenty to say about that too.
Have at it, man. That's pretty much my hot take Sunday on that, is that it felt like a movie that had already come out, but not as good.
Well, here's my hot take on that. So when you put out a script to Hollywood, right? So, like, let's say my script that I was just talking about, my take on the Headless Horseman script, when it goes out, it might go out to 10 different studios and readers and blah blah blah, right? So that idea is out there in the ethos already. That's one thing. So and there's some shady shit that happens in the film business. Not all of it's shady, but some of it is. So if that script is out there or that idea is out there, several things can happen. One, someone can write out, fucking steal the script, like they've done with it was proven that part of Pirates of the Caribbean was stolen because they didn't change any of the fucking names in it. That's one thing that can happen. That's probably rare, but it happens. Another thing is they could say, hey, Jimbo writer, did you see this awesome script? Why don't you fucking write something like that? This is a cool idea. We need a movie like this. That's another thing that can happen. Or sometimes just people think the same fucking things. Like the ideas sometimes form at exact same time. Like there's probably 10 people that made pandemic movies now during the pandemic about the end of the world. Like it's just, you know, the I don't know what to call it, the conscience of the world sometimes works in tandem based on whatever events or popular culture or politics, whatever. So those, any one of those things could happen of why that movie might be very similar and written at in a similar time frame. That's my take on that. What was your first part of that though?
I guess I was just curious what you thought of the movie.
30 years ago.
Yeah. I had a lot of questions in there. I'm sorry.
No, it's like, because I always say to my friends, I have a beautiful mind. Like, remember that Russell Crowe movie? So it's like, it goes all over the place. My brain is doing this, and then you'll say something and it'll trigger like 4 things.
That's the exact same thing. So like, I hate to keep holding off on your point here, but it's like when you talk, like if I think of a question, like I have to focus on it so that I don't start thinking about something else and forget about the question.
Same, bro. Same. Yeah. So my other point on that was 30 years ago. So about it being so far apart is a good story is a good story, and those they're timeless. So the intent of the story, I feel, with this movie was there. However, I think it's super hard to make original movies now because we've seen everything. We've done everything. We've made 7 times.
Yep.
So the little things is the 8th time that it's being made. So as an audience member, like, yeah, we get it. Yeah, right, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's problematic in that. And I definitely know this. I got so many stories, but I once pitched a movie to a guy named Jim Packer at who used to run MGM. And I pitched a movie to him called Uncle Frank that I wrote about the Frank Costello, who's a mobster. And Jim Packer sat through the whole fucking pitch. He let me spew my pitch for like 30 minutes. And he goes, and then it ended and he goes, yeah, that's fucking great. But let me tell you what we got going on. He opens a book. This is MGM. A high gloss catalog of 300 titles that MGM owns. Like someone had prepared this fucking hardback book that was like really nice.
Yeah.
And he opens it up and it has James Bond, it has Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, it has whatever the fuck they own. And he said, these are the top 300 titles. We have thousands of titles. We want to make these movies. And it's the same reason why you keep seeing the same fucking movies made over and over and over and over and over again, because studios don't give a fuck about creativity. They don't give a fuck about a cool movie. What they want is safety net. They want to know what's going to make money, what's going to guarantee asses in seats or digital downloads, and what's comfortable for them and what's a calculated risk. And that's why you see fucking Halloween 18 being made, because that's a proven scenario, and we may lose money, but it's a mitigated risk. And that's why you might not see my movie get made, because it's a new take and they don't give a shit about that. So that's part of the problem. But it's business, man. You know, it's like, it's the movie business.
Yeah, but luckily we now live in a time, I mean, obviously you're an indie director, mostly, indie producer, but it's like maybe you'll find someone who comes across it and is willing to fund it, or find a group of people to fund it, and it just won't go through a major studio. So that's kind of the beauty of the situation, I guess. That
is the beauty of the situation. And I think a lot of streaming platforms, Netflix, I don't know what's going on with Netflix. I think they're just money laundering, to be honest, but that's fine. I'm happy, but they've greenlit so much stuff, and they have so much in the coffers, and they have taken a lot of risk You know, if you look at some of these movies that are coming out now, like I don't know if you saw Nomadland with Frances McDormand.
Mm-mm.
That movie, if I pitched you that movie in a room, you'd probably kick me out and tell me never to fucking ever come back, because the premise is just ludicrous. Like, if I pitched it as a movie that would be interesting or make money, you would say, this is fucking ridiculous. I'll give you a one-line pitch. If a woman is in her RV and she travels the country, you'd be like, that's fucking boring. That's it. That's the pitch. A woman travels the country in her RV. That's my pitch. That's the whole plot. But that movie is probably going to be up for best fucking picture this year.
Well, and that's what's the Tom Hanks movie where he's the postal worker? Is it The Postman or something stupid? Anyways, the movie fucking sucked. I didn't even get all the way through it. Because I'm like, it's just him walking with a child, and then every time something happens, I'm like, why is this a movie?
News of the World?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's
it's 2 hours. No, you know what? It's 2 hours long. Like, can we talk about that movie is 2 hours long?
Well,
there's a dust storm that lasts literally fucking like 6 minutes. It's like, bro, I knew it was a dust storm in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, cut it down. I don't like that, and a lot of people disagree with this stance, but it's like, I don't like that movies have now like 2 hours as the base length.
It is.
What happened to just a good 90-minute movie in and out? But
Man,
like you said, now we need a 6-minute dust storm.
You and I were separated at birth, because I literally like, if you look at my tweets, I'm like tagging the PGA and shit, and I'm like, why is 2 hours the new 90 minutes? Yep. Like, we don't need. It's fine if you're telling something, but most things can be told in 90 minutes, which is why we made that formula to fucking begin with.
Right, exactly. But I mean, now you have a lot of TV shows that are just 90 minutes, but that's a different argument. But like what John Wick 3, 2 hours and something. And I think it's a great movie, but I also went to the bar, then went and saw it and loved it. And but it's like, I also didn't want character development. I just wanted to watch people die for 2 hours, and I got that. But if I want to see Tom Hanks deliver news with a child, like, that does not need to be 2 hours.
No. Sometimes you just want to see sharks eating hot models' asses, and sometimes you want to see fucking Tom Hanks, but it doesn't need to be.
Kind of want to see. I want to see a shark eat Tom Hanks.
You don't need 6-minute dust storms in either of those movies, though. I can tell you that.
No. And I understand that maybe people feel 2 hours is more bang for your buck for what you're paying for. I don't really give a shit, but it's just like, when I sit down, a lot of times I look at the length of a movie, and if it's over 2 hours, it's like, I don't have 2 hours in me right now.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
And movies is escapism. Like, that's the whole point of it. You know, like I want to be enthralled. And again, that could be Tom Hanks walking with a little girl in a prairie, or it could be sharks eating models. Mm-hmm. But I want to be taken out of the moment. If you give me a 6-minute fucking dust storm, now all of a sudden I'm checking my watch. I'm thinking about what I have to do later. Mm-hmm. Like, you're ruining the fantasy for me, because you thought it was cool. You thought it was academic or whatever to make a longer movie. You know, like, I like Screenwriter 101 is, it's got to be interesting on the page. It's got to keep your interest on the page. If it doesn't, move on. If it doesn't move the plot forward, then move on. Mm-hmm. A 6-minute dust storm does not, I'm exaggerating here, but it's a perfect example, does not move the plot along. Like, there's a dust storm, something happens, we get it. Like, move the fuck on, because you're not moving the plot forward. You're disengaging the audience. It's you're like breaking the fourth wall. Just honestly, I honestly think that is a vanity decision. I think that's probably a director going like, oh man, we gotta have this fucking epic dust storm. It's gonna be great. Like, kid's gonna get lost and be fucking awesome. And somebody's appeasing that person when someone should have just said, awesome. Cut, move on, you know? Like,
yep. Yeah, there's so many 2-hour movies that could have been 90 minutes by just cutting out dumb, long scenes or long shots. And I'm not even a director. I'm just some guy.
You know what's the worst? Do you know what I hate the worst about those 2-hour movies? One thing they do is what they did in News of the World, where they just stretch it the fuck out. Mm-hmm. Another thing they do that I hate is the like double, triple, quadruple ending when like the movie's ended, and it's like having sex and you've orgasmed, and then they say, oh, and then
we're not done yet.
Yeah. But and then wait, hold on, 3 months later this thing happened, and it's like usually something that you don't give a shit. It's like I could tell you what happened there too. That's like a writer or director that had like an alternative ending, and they were like, but we gotta say that she got remarried. We have to say she got remarried. And they're like, no, we don't have to fucking say yes, we do. We have to. Okay. 6 months later, we're at her fucking wedding. Like, who the fuck cares? Like,
did you see the Wrong Turn remake or the newest Wrong Turn? So that's kind of my complaint. Someone disagreed with me, but I don't want to entirely ruin it, but the girl gets out at the end and you think it's over, and then all of a sudden they come back, and I'm like, there's an explanation as to why they come back or whatever, and I get that, but I don't really care. Like, they could have just ended it when she got out.
Is that the original one with J-Lo?
It's not J-Lo, but it's someone similar. Eliza Dushku.
Dushku. Yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first one being fine. I didn't realize that there were 6 of them. But hey, that is an 1 hour and 24-minute movie.
There you go. And there's 6 of them. That's exactly my point about,
the same concept. Oh, it's 1 hour and 50 minutes for the new one.
There you go.
So not quite 2 hours. But here's the other thing. I understand when I see a movie that is 1 hour and 50 minutes, it's really only about 1 hour and 43 because there's at least 7 minutes of credits.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yep.
Those are getting longer too.
Yep. Depending on those Marvel movies, it's like 10 to 15 minutes of credits, which is, I watch Marvel movies for a number of reasons, but
yeah.
So
you watch them for the Stan Lee cameos, but those aren't happening anymore.
Yeah, those don't. I mean, they could just CGI him in, I guess.
Yeah. Or they could, build an animatronic in his corpse and do that. That'd be cool.
Just dig up the corpse of Stan Lee and stuff it full of an animatronic. All right, I'm in.
I mean, I'd watch that movie if that was a movie.
Fuck yes, I would watch that movie. It'd be like Weekend at Bernie's, but it's Weekend at Stanley's.
That's great.
Could feasibly we make a movie called Weekend at Stanley's, and it's just his corpse with a robot inside of it? All right. I mean,
and then we could have it could be the sequel to Willy's Wonderland. We'll have Nick Cage fight it.
Did you watch that movie?
I didn't see it, but I know somebody who worked on it, so I kind of know a lot about it.
Well, and I don't really take you for much of a video game guy.
No, I don't play games.
But it's basically like Five Nights at Freddy's, which I'm sure I knew that they tried to make the movie multiple times. It didn't pan out, and then they made the Banana Splits movie, which is very similar to Willy's Wonderland, but this one's closer. Anyways, I thought that movie was wildly entertaining for the fact that Nick Cage says not a single word and kills like 7 animatronics.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I do want to see it.
It's great, and it's 90 minutes.
There you go. Fucking A, man. That's all it needs to be.
Yeah, it was 90 minutes of fun. We watched it one night after band practice, and it got exactly what I wanted out of it.
That's perfect, man.
Right. Some people just don't know when to fucking stop.
That's right.
I know it's getting pushing midnight for you. I don't know if there's any other topics, anything else you want to cover real quick.
Oh man,
let you go.
No, man. I think that's it. Just keep on the lookout for Shark Island, because that trailer's out there now, and then we're gonna be, hopefully picking up a distributor soon and getting that out to the world. And
so there's no release or anything that you know of?
No, because we're still working on some of the sound mix and music. And we're just now getting courted by distributors. So whatever they decide is their perfect release. I imagine, because it's a shark movie, maybe summer, like Shark Week, all that. Mm-hmm. That would be a good time to release it. But since there's way less content because of pandemic, who knows? Like, they might push it through the pipeline and be like, we need to do this fucking out here right now. Who knows? Well,
hopefully it comes out this year, right? Is that looking?
Yeah, I'm sure it will come out this year.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, you have to let me know whenever you get that. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on everything. We'll post the trailer when this audio comes out too from
awesome.
Everything. I'll make Erica do that, but I do appreciate it. So we'll have you come back.
Yeah.
sometime soon. I don't know.
Sure.
I give it 3 months before you have some other movie to talk about, or you so
Yeah, exactly.
really not a big deal.
Yeah. Sounds good, man.
But man, once again, I appreciate the time. We'll keep in touch. We'll have you back soon.
Yeah, thank you, man. Really had a great time, man. Love talking to you. We should do this more often.
Absolutely. Sure. Do you have like social media you want to push real quick?
Yeah, man. If you hit Jude S. Walko on pretty much anything, Instagram, Twitter, and then Shark Island is out there on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The Incantation is also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All that stuff is out there. So between those three, I think that covers my social meds.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get Erica, one of the co-hosts who's on maternity leave. I make her do all the social media stuff, so I'll just tell her what to post.
Oh yeah, perfect. Perfect.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate it again. You have yourself a good night.
Thanks, man. You too. Have a great day.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, see ya. Bye.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next time with someone we actually met Twitch streaming. That one black guy on Twitch. We'll talk more about that when we have him on, but we're going to talk about the movie It Follows, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other stuff. Super, super interesting guy. A lot of fun. Does a lot of really fun streams, so if you're into that, like rates foods, snacks, breakfast cereals, stuff like that. But yeah, that'll be next time. So thanks again. Make sure you check us out on all of the social media stuff.